There's a scripture from Deuteronomy 4, beginning with verse 8. Kind of goes along with the song that was just sung. God says, "And what other nation is so great as to have such righteous decrees and laws as this body of laws I am setting before you today? Only be careful," God tells this to the nation of Israel. "Be careful. Watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them slip from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, and when he said to me, 'Assemble the people before me to hear my words, so that they may learn to revere me as long as they live in the land, and may teach them to their children.'" God cares about what we teach our children, doesn't he? There's a passage in Scripture that I've heard people use, and it's from Proverbs 22, verse 6. It says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And I've heard some parents use that verse as if it is a promise from God. And I got to tell you, it's not so much a promise from God. This comes out of Proverbs. Proverbs are just words of wisdom. And the reason why I think it's not a guarantee, I don't know about any parents here, but my kids have exercised free will at certain times. Not yours, right? No? Oh, well. So that word train means to coach. It actually means that, you've got to guide them along. But you and I, we know as parents, don't we? At the end of the day, our kids will make decisions on their own. And they're going to have to decide for themselves whether or not they're going to follow Jesus, don't they? You know what? God has no grandchildren. You know that? Everybody is a child. They don't get there. Our kids aren't Christians because we're Christians. They're Christians because they decided to follow Jesus Christ. I also want to just say that good parenting, sadly, does not guarantee that our kids will grow up to love Jesus. I've known, it was scary. I've known some pastors to me that were just really just top-notch spiritual people, and I would hear some of the real struggles they were going with some of their kids, and I'm going, man, we are just not exempt. Nobody's exempt from this. Yeah, think about this. God is the perfect parent. And what about his kids? He, as much as he laid it all out and loved them and died for them, for us and stuff, we still don't always follow God. We don't follow what he teaches us in his word at times. So I just want to say that because there are a lot of good parents that beat themselves up over the poor choices that their adult children especially are making. I remember meeting with a parent. It was in my previous church, and I think they had like 4 kids, and there was just one that had really just kind of gone off the deep end, choices and whatnot, and they were really distraught over this. But I remember the mom specifically going, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And I said, well, you've got 4 kids, right? I said, so they're all doing this. Well, no. Okay, so you brought this one up differently than that one. Well, no. I go, and that's the point. They get to make choices too. And that's just part of our reality as parents. But my question this morning is, how do we do our best as parents to raise our children to love Jesus? And the reason why I'm asking that, is because of an article that I came across. I'll get to that in a moment. Because, you think you know everything about parenting, and then you have kids. Right? I remember when Joshua was born, and we're in the hospital up in Rochester, New York, and it was a few days go by, and they actually said we could take him home. And I'm like, are they nuts? I have, we have no idea. Where's the manual? It doesn't even come. Everything else I get in life comes with a man. I can get it online now. Where's the manual for this? You know, it's harder to buy a pet today than it is to bring home a child from the hospital. You know, man, but at least from our experience, it's also one of the most challenging as well as rewarding experiences and roles. So both my sons are young adults now. One's 18, one's 21, maybe 22 this summer, holy mackerel. And in spite of all the mistakes that we've made along the way, you know what, right now, I can say this as of right now, that's all I can say. They love Jesus and they love the church, and we're not perfect by any means in that, but I can't even say what will happen tomorrow. I don't know. One of them can still, or both of them could choose to walk away from it all. We pray that doesn't happen, but what I thought I'd do this morning on this Mother's Day is invite my wife up to kind of talk with me in front of all of you this morning, not because we think we have it all together, because we don't. But as I said in a moment ago, I came across this article. It was called this, 10 Keys to Raising Great Children Who Love Jesus. It was written by a guy named Dale Hudson. He's served in children and family ministries for over 24 years. He's the director of children's ministries at Christ Fellowship Church in Palm Beach, Florida. And he was just recently named one of the top 20 influencers in children's ministry. So he wrote this article basically saying, these are some common things I've seen about parents who have raised children who love Jesus. So I'm reading through this and I'm going, there's some affirmation there. Some of these have played out in our life. And I thought we'd just share them with you. And we'll talk a little bit about our experience with that. Again, you may have other things that have been critical to that in your life. But I think these are critical for us as parents, and maybe we just share a little bit. So the first one he mentions is you got to walk the walk. You got to walk the talk. Okay? So you may have heard this saying, your kids can't hear what you're saying because what you're doing is speaking so loudly. You know, anybody here raised with, do as I say and not as I do? Does that work? Does that work really? You know? What are you doing raising your hand? You do know your parents are sitting on either side of you, right? You know, just... some of this is just common sense, right? You can't raise your kids to love Jesus when in fact you're living differently than that. It just is, right? Yeah. You can chime in anytime, but you got to use that. You know?
Is it on? Yeah, you have to be authentic here and consistent there, because if you are different in church and then at home, the kids see it and pick up and call you out on it right away. And they'll pick up things from you whether or not you intend them to. You know, the kids we know that were really, really little, that didn't go to our church, just the school, and swore at our house, heard it all the time at home. And so it's not like they taught their kids to swear, they just heard it all the time. And I didn't have that problem, but when I got frustrated, I used to growl. Arr. And then I heard one time 3-year-old Daniel go, Arr. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to stop doing that. Because they pick up what you are modeling all the time.
You know, that one hopefully is kind of a no-brainer. We just got to recognize, if you want your kids to love Jesus, you authentically have to live the life of a person that loves Jesus. I think it comes down to that. The next one was affirm the gift. Parents, they see. I'm just reading what he wrote. They see the gifts that God has placed in their child, and they affirm those gifts. The words "I believe in you" echo in their child's ears. They move beyond calling their child out to calling their child up to be all that God intended them to be. And so, Kathy, I remember Chuck Swindoll did a whole series on raising children, and he said something that I know you've repeated numerous times throughout our life.
Going back to that verse?
So it goes back to that verse that I started with in Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
For me, I was 5 years plus trying to have children. So I intentionally thought of this for years, intentionally thought of how will I raise children, and tried to learn about it. So I had that benefit of not being able to have children to learn and study. And Chuck Swindoll challenged that this verse really meant, do you know your child well enough so that you can help them be the best them that they're supposed to be? So when Joshua was born, it was really my goal to figure him out, to know when he was hungry.
Still our goal, but that's all right.
I got it down. To know he was hungry before he was hungry, to know he was tired before he was tired, to know what was going to make him mad, what was going to make him frustrated, how he was going to learn, how he was going to best be shaped. My goal was to what makes you tick, and to figure that out so that I could then pour into that and shape that character so that he would love God and stand for the model that I also taught them, the mantra. If you want to pick a girl, she has to love Jesus, love mommy, and then she can love you. That's the rule. But I really did know my kids well enough, and they were so very, very different. And that may have been easier in our case because Daniel, being born with a disability that wasn't diagnosed till he was 3, we had to treat them differently. But they're different, and all children are different. So we didn't bring them up the same. We brought them up the way they were supposed to be brought up. The punishments, the teaching, everything was hopefully the way they would learn.
Chuck Swindoll takes the nuance of that verse and says, we read it, train up a child in the way he should go. And in our heads we go, train up in the child in the way we think they should go. He was saying, and challenging us to look at that a little bit differently. Train up a child in the way he should go, or she should go. And he used the word bent. Everybody has their own bent, their leaning, their personality. Learn that. So, we call, I call Daniel the anti-Joshua and Joshua the anti-Daniel. In some ways, they're so different from one another that we love them, equally, but I can't say that we actually raise them the same. They don't have the same needs. They don't have the same desires. They don't have the same personality. There's certain parameters that we're all equal, and all of that, of course, but it was raising him that way. The third one is another kind of, if you want them to love Jesus, it's read the Word. Kids who grow up to love Jesus have parents whose Bibles are worn out. And it says here, and that's not from sitting in the hot sun on the car dashboard all week. It's waiting to be grabbed next Sunday for church. It's being read each day in front of the kids, with the kids. And simply, Kathy did a lot of reading with our boys growing up, and one of those was children's different Bibles actually, at different ages, just to read Scripture.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this one I always think I could have modeled higher standards for myself so that they saw more. But you're busy doing so much laundry. But we did, the preschool Bible, the toddler Bible, the children's Bible, and we brought them to Sunday school. And the other part that was really important was I knew their Sunday school teachers really well, so that I went to their Sunday school teachers at time and said, yeah, I'm trying to shape this character flaw I see. Can you support me here? And they would chime in and support them with the Word of God in both ends of their life. Yeah, I maybe shouldn't have told Daniel that today. But
this one is much more important, I think, than we ever give credit for. And I read it and I went, holy mackerel, because this was really
the most important thing we did, I think.
Well, it was just it was just so critical. It's called Eat the Meal. And so let me read what he says here. Research shows that children who have dinner with their parents are less likely to drink, smoke, do drugs, get pregnant, become depressed, or develop eating disorders. They also do better socially and academically, and I believe spiritually. Why? Because a family meal is much more than eating. It's time to pray, communicate, connect, mentor, and disciples. That was a rule for us in the house growing up right from the get-go. And we sat down, we always had dinner together. We pretty much still do. And when we do that, TV's off, phones are away, no Game Boys. We said none of that stuff. It all, and that's always been kind of part of that. It was interesting when I was talking to a guy that was recently a brand new father. He says, you know what, we're starting off right away. We're eating together. And I said, really? I said, that's a really neat thing. I said, let me tell you, how that's played out. And we don't think about that, and so sometimes our kids' friends come over and are like, yeah, we never eat together. I grab my meal, go off to the living room, watch TV, and I'm up here and there, and we just are all eating anywhere, different times, different places.
And that was a strange concept for me when the kids would come in the house and had no experience of that. I was like, well, how do you eat? I don't understand. But it was also a time they had to have eye contact. So if they were going to do something wrong during the day and you knew you had to sit at the table and face mom and dad that night, I think you were a little less likely to do it. But statistically, this is solid research. Kids that eat supper together with their family and face each other and have a meal and have a conversation really do make better choices in life. So it means moms usually are the ones, but you have to be organized. You have to think ahead. You have to go, yeah, we have this 1 half hour. We're all going to be at the house at the same time. If supper's in the crock pot, I can get it on the table. We can do this. But you have to be committed to do it most of the time, and it's really important. And it was required, and they could make plans for afterwards. But no, we're sitting down and having supper, and we just kept adding plates some nights because there were other people there too. But they got to witness what it was really like outside of Thanksgiving time sometimes to have family with a meal with a family, which was just kind of sad, but really true for some of them.
Next one is serve the people. So when a child, he says, sees his parents or her parents serving others, makes a huge impact spiritually in the child's life, because serving is a key component to discipleship. And I was interested in reading that because I started thinking back about our kids. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure. I often took my kids with me when I was delivering food baskets to people in the church. I said, hey, go for a drive. And I wanted them to be a part of seeing and being a part of that. It's why I went. And the reason I really went back to El Salvador the second time is because I got to take Joshua with me. He's the reason really that I went back. In that, it's the reason why our boys were involved with us when we Christmas morning served breakfast at Harrington House, that some of you, or went over to the Providence Rescue Mission when we did that serving just a couple of years ago. Always wanted our kids to be with us when we were doing those types of things, simply because it's teaching our kids that it's not all about you, and it's about serving and giving and thinking about the needs of others around you.
Yep.
This one, the next one here, love the spouse. So you got to work on that one.
I know. Huh? If only I didn't think so highly of him.
The best parenting tool is a happy marriage. Solid marriages create solid kids. Parents who love each other have kids who love Jesus. That's just God's design. I know that that always doesn't play out, and it's always not your choice. But as you know, just so you know, it's in parenting. Our kids didn't stand a chance. We always knew we were going to have each other's back, no matter what. Even if we disagreed with how they were going to handle something with the kids, we would never disagree in front of them. We said that even before we had kids. We're not going to do that.
United front. You have to have a united front, because they really do unintentionally, but it's just they're little sinners. Divide and conquer, and they would just go at you if you were weak in that in not being united. You were going to be divided and conquered. And the worst moment I can remember was George punished Joshua. And I don't know why, but I remember
matter.
what he did. He took Barney away from him. And I remember thinking, why did he have to go all the way to the number 10? Why didn't he start at like number 3 or 4 or 5? Why did you go to 10? Because that's only the time I have is when he watches Barney, and now I have no time. So we had that discussion later. Next time, could you please go to step 1, step 2, before you do take Barney away? Because that's the only time I have to take a shower.
I still have that leverage over Joshua too, taking Barney away, but you will graduate and walk across that stage and no more Barney. That was the thing. Pray the prayers. Again, this is one where I hope, we're talking about raising kids to love Jesus. That's so critical. Praying with your kids, praying for your kids. It's prayer's just such a part of, an integral part of family life, right?
Well, it goes beyond that, because I had a bookmark of all the things I thought were important over the years I started to develop that I could pray for my children. And most of them were character-based, because some of the things become less important. But you have to understand God isn't limited by time. So I've been praying for my children's wives since they were born, because I figured their wives were born about now too. So, why not? Pray that they are safe and they're being raised to be godly women, that they love Jesus. Pray that they're being well educated. Prayers aren't wasted, they're stored. And I still reap the benefit of my mother-in-law's prayers. So pray often. Pray for big things, little things, future things, past things. And make a list and consistently pray for your child and their life, for their future.
Set the boundaries. Talk about that. I think a lot of people talk about that. Children who stray the most are kids whose parents don't set reasonable rules and boundaries. Parents who are consistent in enforcing set rules and boundaries actually end up becoming very close to their children. Of course, that doesn't mean overdoing the rules or having rules without a relationship. That doesn't cut it at all. But, I think that one of the things that was important, especially as we were just watching, listening to the radio, different talk shows and stuff like that, is we never really, how do I put this? We always wanted to be our kids' friends, but we always knew we were their parents first. And there are times when being a parent means we're not their friends. They have plenty of friends. They only have 2 parents. And that's our job. Mm-hmm. More than, it's great when we get along, but that was never the goal. And we just see that sometimes playing out differently.
Well, and again, you have to know your child. And Joshua was our first, so I learned on him. He was the practice one. But I knew I could explain things to Joshua and that he would respond. He was logical. He was teachable that way. So I could say, no, because, and he would get that. But if you ask our kids, they didn't have a curfew. And Josh was like, Mom, you took any rebellious chance I had out of me by always saying yes. And that's true, because to me, it made no sense to have one curfew when every time you went out, it was a different set of scenarios. So, where are you going? To a concert. Okay, what time is it over? Okay, then you should be home by now, by this time. Well, where are you going? Just over here. Okay, well then be home by this time. You have school tomorrow. So they didn't have one curfew that they had to abide by, and
they had a new one every day.
They had a different one every day. It was circumstantial driven, mm-hmm. but reasonable too. And they didn't take advantage of it. And we knew that in them, or we would have responded differently.
A number of years back on Mother's Day, Joanne Roberts gave the message, and she said something that day that has stuck. I know, especially
Actually,
with you.
I don't think it's when she told me this, I think casually, because she doesn't even remember it.
Really?
Joshua was Julian's age, like 2, and he hadn't really started talking yet. he like started talking in paragraphs at like 3. But he was beginning to say no all the time because he was hearing no all the time. And I was afraid of that. I was like, oh gosh, he's saying no first because I'm saying no all the time. And I understood the length of battles in my lifetime when I looked ahead from 2, and I was just exhausted at the thought of having to fight every battle. And I said, Joanne, what do I do about this? And she said, say yes as often as you can, and when you say no, mean it. And I'm not sure she remembers giving me that counsel, but I literally took it and applied it to my life and said, why do I say no? Because I don't want chocolate ice cream for breakfast. What's the big deal? Yeah, you can have chocolate ice cream for breakfast, sure. Just don't tell your teachers. And, you know, why am I saying no about going outside before you take a bath? Okay, that makes better sense to go outside and then take a bath. There was almost a reaction to saying no first instead of yes first. And so
it was not like we just said yes just because. It was, really the goal was try to say yes as often as you can.
Yep. And when I said no, and it wasn't that often, I don't think my kids say it was that often, there was no debate afterwards. I really did say no, didn't I? Yep. Okay. Done.
Don't go ask your dad because then we'll know and you'll get in bigger trouble.
But it
right?
really was liberating to give yourself permission to say yes most of the time.
Big one, and you need to, we're way over time here. Monitor the friends.
Oh, yeah.
Teach them how to choose good friends, peers. I think that there comes a really critical point where what their friends think matters more than what you think as parents. They really do. And so you have to do something about friends. So we've gone in different directions with this at different times for different reasons. All I can tell you is the one example when the son of Satan lived next door. Ooh, did I say that? I'm sorry. Little boy moved next door, and they weren't going to be friends as much as the little boy next door wanted them to. Because when I saw this kindergartner, and it was grandfather that really was raising him, when they were in front of our house on the street, and the little boy was kicking him and swearing at him, and when he was in our house, said, "Let's go downstairs so that your parents can't hear." Not happening. You know, and he got into drugs. He was doing all kinds of things. This wasn't going to happen later in life and stuff. But you know what? And that caused friction with us and the next door neighbors. That was okay. You know, we could live with that. But there was just this. There was ways that we thought our kids could influence friends, and we worked on that. And there were other ones where we just said, "This is not happening. You cannot be friends with this kid." You just got to set those at times.
And the truth is, one of my deepest prayers was that if they went to public school, they were less likely to probably have Christian friends. But if we didn't oversaturate them with everything Christian, maybe they could choose a Christian college, and their adult friends would be Christians. And that was one of my deepest prayers. But Joshua did choose Gordon, but it was, after a lot of agony of prayer and understanding that really was his choice. And I'm very pleased with the friends he's made up there. They're good influences on him.
Last one, we'll close with this. Cultivate the gratitude, which is just really counteracting this sense of entitlement that a lot of our kids seem to be in this culture seem to have, because that's opposite of the heart of Jesus. So we just teach them very much, not just on Thanksgiving, but how to be grateful. Remind them once in a while of, how good they really have it. Be thankful.
And I think we were transparent. They knew we weren't wealthy and withholding from you.
Right.
If we could give you this, we would. So I think out of that, they appreciated what they have gotten.
So we just pour into our children's lives. We are over time here, but Jen's going to come on up and close us out, and then we'll close with a song.
Good morning. Is this on? Okay. I won't take up very much of your time, just a few minutes, but I think it was about 2 years ago, following a Mother's Day service, that I followed Pastor into his office and I said, I think I might have something to say about this whole Mother's Day thing or this Mother's Day thing, but I didn't know what it was. So the following Mother's Day, as that approached, he asked me, "Are you ready?" And I said, no, definitely not. I wasn't ready. I didn't know exactly what to say, but I knew that there was something to be said. So here we are today, Mother's Day, and I'm ready. I want to take a few minutes of your time on this Mother's Day just to celebrate women, all women, mothers or not. This is about women today, and I think it's a good message for our men to hear as well, because husbands, fathers, brothers, you are our partners in this life. So over the last year, I really started to pray about what I wanted to say, and I've got to tell you, I ended up on the most amazing journey of self-discovery, and I had no idea. I've talked to a lot of women over the last year. Some were mothers, some were wives, some were not. Some were old, some were young, some were Christian, some were not. And man, there were a lot of laughs because women are funny. Women are definitely funny, but there were also a lot of tears because women are struggling. And as different as we all are, I've come to see this distinct common thread. All of us struggle with just being ourselves. On a regular basis, we look in the mirror and we pass harsh judgments on ourselves. We criticize with heavy hands. We focus on all of the things that we didn't do. When given a compliment about an accomplishment, it's always followed by a thanks but, and then a big story about all the balls you had to drop in order to make this one thing happen. Why do we do this to ourselves? Well, I don't have to tell you that we kind of live in this world that sets these crazy expectations for us that are just impossible to achieve. We live in a world of social media, Victoria's Secret's angels, of super women leaning in. Everything we feel we're not is right there for us to see on every single mobile device, every TV ad, every magazine stand, every Pinterest board. It's right there. We compare ourselves to each other. We judge each other. We set ourselves up to be disappointed. It can consume you and it can crush you if you let it. But I forgot to mention the one most important thing about this journey, and that was the prayer. I have never prayed more in my life than I did over the last year. I happy prayed, I sad prayed, I angry prayed, I prayed for strength, peace, guidance, wisdom. I did pray to win the lottery. That did not happen, but I'll tell you what did happen. Some of the most amazing things through these conversations I was having, through these dinners with my friends, through these chance encounters with women I didn't even know. I would listen to these women talk about themselves and look at them and think, how can you not see how amazing you are, how strong you are, how kind, how unique? And then I started to think, well, if they are having such a hard time seeing this in them, then maybe I'm having a really hard time seeing this in me. Through these women, God gave me just a little peek at how he really sees me, how he really sees all of us. Your hair, your job, your weight, how clean your house is, how many things you volunteered for, how many dinners you cooked all week. All of these arbitrary things by which we judge ourselves and each other, this is not how God sees you. This is not how God sees me. So I stand before you today, a few pounds heavier than I would like. Fresh off a parenting fail, as my son swore at me when I was trying to put him to bed last night. My 4-year-old. Yeah. I didn't even turn in a paper that I had for a class this past week, and I haven't cooked dinner in a month, I think. But I am beautiful. I am strong. I am smart. I am a Proverbs 31 woman. I am a woman of valor. I am a child of God, and I am all of these things through Christ who gives me strength. And so are you.
You are beautiful. You are smart. You are funny. You are kind. You are unique. You are worthy of love and affection. You are never too much, and you are always enough. You are precious. You are a diamond, a rose, a pearl, the most stunning of all God's creation. You are worth more than you could ever imagine. Worth more than the numbers on the scale, or the hair product you use, or the shoes you wear. More than how many girls wish they were you, or how many guys wish they had you. More than the price tags on your clothes, or the percentage at the top of your math test, or even the number of followers you have on Twitter. Your worth surpasses all earthly things, because in the eyes of the Lord God, you are loved, and you are worth dying for. Regardless of who you think you are. Whether you model in a magazine or you model pottery with grandma. Whether you're on the hot list or the not list. Whether you're head cheerleader or a high school dropout. Whether you're Miss Popular or you've never had anyone you could call a friend. Whether you love yourself and love your life, or you can't stand to look in the mirror and you feel as if everything in your life is falling apart. Whether you're such a winner or you feel like the world's biggest failure, regardless of who you think you are. The reality is that you deserve someone who would give up their life for you, because you are powerful and strong and capable. Read about the women in the Bible: Esther, Ruth, Martha, Mary. These women changed the world forever, and inside of you, each and every one of you is a woman with that same power and that same strength and that same world-changing capability. And your responsibility is to find that woman and to set that woman free. This is who you are. And any voices in your mind that try and tell you differently are from the enemy. And the next time you hear them, this is what you say. You say, "Nuh-uh, not me, Satan. I am a daughter of the living God, cherished, loved, and adored above all things by the Creator of all things, for the glory of Him who is greater than all things. I am awesome." And please, don't you forget it.